Welcome to the March 11th Richmond Parking Advisory Committee meeting. Do we have any public comment? I don't think there's anyone here present, and I don't see anyone online. So moving on to additions, or we usually say who's present?
I always write it down.
Oh, okay.
You don't usually say it.
Okay.
You taking notes? You good?
He's, yeah.
Yeah.
Additions or deletions to the agenda?
I have one addition. I had a takeaway from our last meeting about a follow-up on park ordinance. Take all of 3 seconds.
And we've left the space at after 7:20 for the minutes.
Okay.
We can add things, so
Okay.
that,
I'm sorry, Diane, would you repeat that? I was,
Follow-up on park ordinance.
okay, thank you.
what did that mean?
I had a takeaway from our select board meeting.
I mean, what was the question? I guess we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
7:30.
And I have also a short topic. I wanted to discuss the maps and what we put on our map and what we put on the external Google and Apple maps. And that'll also take 5 minutes. 3 minutes.
You can hold us to it.
Okay, anything else? Then moving to the first item, report on Route 2 and Cochran Road parking Jonesville. Is that you, Diane?
It was intended to be.
Or
We talked about the,
Route 2, I assume.
Yeah, so this intersection of Route 2 and Cochran.
okay, yeah, the Jonesville intersection. I am so sorry. I've got it. I think I followed it up. I think I copied you all on it
Yep.
also. I don't have it written down, but essentially met with Joe Kelly, met with Pete, signed off with Josh. Everybody looked at everything. Did you all have a chance when you pull out and look at the
Yep.
intersection there? And those delineation posts, or there's a post, it's like I guess they only put those 4-way posts, which Chuck, I think you're familiar with, 4-sided posts. They go in and it looks like a reflector. It's not a reflector, but it's white. It's to prevent it's to allow line of sight for the intersection as you both Cochran Road and Stage Road as you look towards Bolton. Following this complaint for a couple of years now. So any comments, questions you might have?
Appreciate you doing that. And I think it's one of those back burner items that's good they moved it off the stove. So,
The unfortunate thing is that my emails fell, I think I told you, fell into the spam filter of the V-Trans person who I was initially talking to. So it would have been done.
Okay.
Yeah. Got the right guy.
Anything else?
Any questions?
Talk about that.
You can add that as a thing, but this was the intersection,
Right.
so you can bring it up at another.
Is it too late to add another agenda item?
Do you want to just,
Pretty sure we're allowed to back up.
Okay, good.
What do you have?
Well, just sort of relating to this is, a year or so ago, we had been pursuing getting a lease on the railroad right away that's opposite Be There Towing. And we finally found the right person and, offered them $1 a year and they said
what's the
$1,000.
agenda topic?
yeah, what's the agenda?
Oh, the agenda topic would be, do we want to revisit the railroad right of way? on
Jonesville.
Route 2. Just in the process, because we're removing some illegal parking, maybe we could add some. But the question is,
Okay, so
okay,
we'll have time for that.
good,
Yep.
okay.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, I'm thinking, let's just keep on the agenda for Matt, so he's
Okay.
not bouncing all over the place.
Okay. Then moving on to second item, follow up on Dugway Road parking signs.
So that went well. I flagged all the signs that needed to be changed. Added 4 new combination signs and posts in some places that the folks were dragging out brush and putting out cinder blocks and some of that kind of stuff. Got it approved by Pete, approved by Josh, and signs are supposed to being put on order. No real surprises there. Everything we had talked about and everything is flagged. If you were riding by and you wanted to see what it was, you could see it.
I've seen them. And so when do we think the signs will be actually?
Obviously, with the frost out, I kind of threw, end of April out at Pete,
Okay,
and I thought that was a reasonable one, and he tended to go, oh, yeah. Pete's also going out for shoulder surgery. Maybe he sneaks that out before he goes. Not sure it's public knowledge, but it is now.
Can I have a side topic on
Yes.
Dugway Road and signs? Not that I don't know if we should do it or land trust or residents, but sometimes a nice sign that's written by local people that says, welcome to our neighborhood, this area is cleaned up by volunteers, could you do your part? Or however it happens to be, some people put quotes on their little, I'm just wondering, is there any need to like soften a little, welcome here, can you just trash in, trash out, or is it?
More of a temporary kind of a spontaneous sign than I think we can run on that topic pretty well. And we could either bump it to the end of this meeting or put it on the next agenda, but I also have similar ideas that I think.
so
we could-
we've been having similar ideas. Maybe it's just a matter of, well, of inviting people to put something in the front yard or something like that.
Well, personal, because where did we just see that?
So, well, I mean, when you go down on the Duxbury Road, River Road, and you go by the farm and they have that handwritten sign about please slow down, we have critters crossing the road. Things like
Oh,
that
yeah.
really just like, yeah, I'll
They
do
just
that.
need a better sign.
I know they haven't repainted, I understand that, but I've seen other communities put signs up that just might give an empathetic response.
We'll add that to today, and if we don't have time today, we'll roll it into the
Yeah.
next meeting.
No, I think it's a worthy.
Anything else on number 2 follow-up on Dugway Road parking signs? Then moving on to East Road parking, East Cochran Road parking options. I was going to lead with that if this is okay, and Diane was actively involved, so she can jump in. So we met with Tyler, the zoning administrator, and
We was you.
oh, Diane and I, and with Pete on Monday. And Tyler had written a memo about both Gillette Pond and East Cochran Road, which maybe you've seen and we could post on our site, if Google Docs, if we want to. And for East Cochran Road, the big conflict is that you're not allowed to put fill in the special flood hazard area for parking. You can put it in to build a road, but there's no permitted use for parking. And I pressed him on a number, and so it was this $4,000 proposal from Pete where you would put so many loads of gravel in to make shoulder parking next to Bombardier Meadow that would hold 6 spaces. Just below the bridge on the West White and the Bombardier side of the road. And I pressed him, Tyler, on a couple points. One was, could one get a letter of map change? Because the top of that, as far as I can tell, is not within the 100-year floodplain. And he was not supportive of that idea. And then I said, well, could one have it for another use, such as allowing bicycles or pedestrians to walk on the side of the road? And he was not supportive of that. And so to me, conceivably, it would be possible to push it through on either of those grounds. But given that he was skeptical, might say so to the select board, One would need the Development Board of Review to approve it. That seems like that would be fairly challenging. And the other way is one could get the zoning rules changed, which would also be challenging. So it seemed doubtful to me that one could easily get those 6 spaces put in on the shoulder. And the other possibility that I haven't brought up before is if there was no parking in the meadow, which might be the way to go on the land trust property. And people correct me on this, the new parking ordinance that was put in place roughly a year ago starts at the Duxbury Road. And so there's parking, the no parking sign is 100 feet back. Conceivably, that sign could be moved up and you could have parking that was clearly allowed in the general area where people pull in. We're pulling into the temporary area, but this presumably the better solution would be to have the land trust move forward. John?
So this is where the curb cut used to be.
Yeah, that I think that the no parking sign is put to make room for the curb cut, but if there was no curb cut, it could be forward, but I'm thinking you may all agree it'd be better to have the parking on the Bombardier Meadow. Diane, what can you add to any of
I
this?
think wow, talk about due diligence. John was looking at every possible angle to make this work. I think it's the flood, it's just the floodplain, the flood markers, and it's at the state level, even though there's also layers that the town can put on. It's just that you can't put full in floodplain. You can't put fill in floodplain. He was working on every which way. I was really curious too. There was a story that Pete and Tyler had been working really hard trying to find a way around to move the playground up by the band shell.
Just like there's somebody else taking this argument on other than us.
Yeah, and Pete couldn't, it just is too close to the flood area, even that.
28 inches.
Exactly, even though that place never floods, they couldn't by any which way make that work. So these are two people who really were like looking at different angles, and I felt like they heard John and they really, were okay with the back and forth, and it was education for John and I for sure, being there. At this moment in time, it's not feasible to do that. And that was your charge. You went off to see about a feasibility study. Is this possible?
Yeah.
I think there are bigger entities wanting to have this battle than we are, and a door may open for us later, but swinging the big stick of 6 parking spaces is probably not a very big stick. But if you're down here talking about $200,000 worth of playground equipment, and they don't want to put it back in and have it destroyed again next spring, so they want to move it up to the band shell and move the band shell over and all that, and maybe bring in a little bit of something. I think that argument is stronger, and it may set a precedent that we can tag on to. Another point that I overheard was that there may be a difference that if the fill material comes from within the floodplain, then you haven't changed the floodplain level. The thought is this. The thought is, of course, that Matt Buckley brings in 300 truckloads of fill and gets his house up this high, and now the Barnes house floods because Matt built his house so higher, and I get that. My feeling on this is that I don't see a clear path to go against Tyler's ruling right now. I think a little homework, maybe we'll find something out, but I don't think we can appeal it on the grounds of 6 parking spaces. I do feel that when we presented the new past ordinance to the select board, part of our argument was that we were leaving 8 parking spaces here, and that let us ban parking all the way around here. I think how many spots are left there now?
I don't know how many we could claim.
Okay.
I've seen 3 cars there. John and I were also talking because, we've walked up and down that and tried to look at it. And I don't know if there was an optical illusion to us when the grass was up. So right now, all the grass is pushed down, but when the grass was all up and we were walking it, trying to figure out where the ordinance should be, it looked better, like it looked possible, right? With all the grass pushed down, I'm in agreement with John. I wouldn't put my car on there.
I parked there a year ago and it wasn't easy. If you had children and small children in the car, it wouldn't be ideal getting them in and out of their car seat. It's hard to open the door. If you had a boat on top of your car, it would fall off. I was able to do it
Ban parking.
in a 4-wheel drive vehicle.
And the trade-off was we allowed parking here, but now we lost almost all of this.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think,
I think the natural one solution is to really help encourage the Richmond Land Trust to put in at least a drop-off area or
Yeah.
or something. I mean, it was part of their whole plan when they bought the place. They too will have issues and they won't be able to like fill their, I mean, it's floods all the time where they're gonna put parking, but who knows, maybe
They, yeah,
a drop-off area would, and then,
they talked about an ADA.
but then
So-
park where though? That's the problem. If I got out with my family and I drop off the canoe and the kids and all that stuff, and then I go park, come back to the car, come back to the canoe, where is that parking that I'm doing?
understand.
And that's where the problem's gonna become.
And what I was gonna finish saying was that when I went to park there last week, to me, it really seems like with the repaving that it is even harder to park there.
Yeah,
And Chuck, I don't know if you've driven by and looked at it, but it's not, a few people will park there, but not
Right.
very many.
no, I feel somewhat
And there is,
guilty to the crystal ball that we should have predicted this, and when we heard about the
Well,
parking, we kind of could have said, hey, how about this? And, we didn't do anything to create the problem, but I think maybe I could have been a little bit more on my game to have seen it coming.
In terms of how they handled the paving or?
Yeah,
Um,
they're just how they handle, really any of that. Again, do we feel we can do anything about it? About the situation down there before summertime this year? I don't see a clear line of appeal to Tyler's ruling. Maybe somebody will come up with one. And to modify our ordinance to allow more people to park down there takes time. So,
and that's not what we left the select board at that time with when we were doing the ordinance. It was to not let so many cars park there because of the safety issue. And I think this is land trust land. If they want people to use it, I think the land trust has to help people use their property.
I agree. But I also feel that the trade-off, and I can remember the conversation, well, we sat down and our committee was in 2 groups. We had one group that really wanted a lot of parking. We had one group that didn't want much parking at all. And I seem to remember sitting down and doing my baby steps thing. And this is the compromise we came up with. And when we presented the select board, what we offered them was, 8 parking spaces or 8 to 10 or whatever it was that we had on our map. And now we're not able to give that to people. I think we've got to be open to somehow giving that back again.
Do we know, so I heard that Pete had said that there was no rise. Is there some mitigation? I mean, can we verify that it
He said-
hasn't changed?
He said that they just put an inch in and it was,
It was flat?
yeah,
Is it still flat?
it is flat. It is.
What's flat?
There's no ridge. There's it just goes down. There's no, when they first put it in, there was an edge, but then they go, like in our driveway, there's an edge and then
Sure pack or
they put-
something.
they didn't do the sure pack along there, but they did send it down.
I have some photos. I don't think they're definitive. I feel my opinion for having parked before and after is, yes, it is gotten harder. And
There are spots along Duxbury Road that people can drop their canoe and park over there. I don't want to publicize it, but there is,
Street.
and there is parking across the train tracks
Yeah, yes,
people use.
you can park at where we're talking about renting the property. Yes, you can park there.
Is the access, this is a dumb question, is the canoe access still there that's down the Duxbury Road a little ways?
You mean the
Yes.
beacon?
Yeah.
It still exists.
Down
Down the Duxbury.
Duxbury Road.
Oh,
Yeah,
wait, oh,
yeah,
the
down
That's
Duxbury Road.
Longfield Bridge, yeah, that's
two
down,
and a
down
half
past the
miles.
Freniers,
No, I mean,
2 miles.
I mean the canoe access that
the Freniers.
is, no, before that, wasn't there an access, I see people using it, an access area just a few hundred yards down from the intersection.
Like Fusco's old house.
That's the,
Not,
am I imagining
not-
things?
There's a canoe access on the Duxbury Road.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah,
there
we,
is.
no,
we
but
put
it's
in
much
down past
further
the
down
Freniers.
than that. It's much further down. It's,
Oh, it is,
it's
okay.
2 miles, isn't it?
Yeah, it's down, it past Honey
It's a
Hollow,
state-
past.
A state parking lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not talking, I know what you're talking about. No, there was a little something, just a few hundred yards.
I think it used to be Fusco's house. And it had a little pool
Oh, yeah.
at
With the
the
beaver.
downwater side of it. I think you're right. I think that was a
Yeah,
place where you
yeah,
slide a
I just
canoe.
didn't know if that was still,
I don't think it's
and,
viable.
and who owned that, or, and if it's still viable.
I-
Anyway, never mind.
I looked for the ones you were referring to, Diane, the last week. I couldn't guess what you were talking about.
Which ones?
Ones on the Duxbury Road. There were shoulders, but they looked like they were lower down and they weren't
Are you talking about,
easy to park there. You wouldn't conceivably could, and maybe that's what you're.
are you talking about, along the Bombardier's other field, the one behind us? And down Duxbury Road?
In front of the cedar trees across from our house.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a little lower down, but,
Yeah.
okay, but it's off the
People do
pavement.
park there.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And it
And
is,
that's-
I think it is legally people. do
Uh-huh.
park.
So where are we now then? Are we saying officially nothing to be done for the foreseeable future?
Well, could we have us or the select board encourage the Richmond Land Trust to make some parking available?
I'd like to, again, we're in a little limbo with the land trust because they have mentioned having drop off pickup down there, having handicap access down there and all that stuff. I think Jim made it fairly clear to us that right now they're all hands on deck on the Gillette Pond Dam. And they're not really looking for any more projects for this year. I don't, unless we're gonna, I think we should keep looking into getting around this floodplain thing. And whether that means material from the floodplain stays in the floodplain, or we find somebody else breaks the ice on that, I think it's a worthwhile venture. And again, my other question would be, do we go back and loosen up the ordinance that we put in there and get a few more cars parked in there?
Would it be? I know that they're heads down on Gillette Pond, but that doesn't keep us from starting the conversation.
Definitely,
I would say that would be a productive, to go ahead and talk to them, remind them about the ADA thing and talk about, that it's limiting access. Maybe they would reconsider, maybe they don't put a big lot there, but what you were suggesting.
Do we see any of the, so I see three change, one option, we don't do anything. Option two is we try to pursue the parking fill argument. Item 3 is we try to loosen up the ordinance, and item 4 would be that we chat with the land trust. Of those 3 change options, what can we make happen this year?
none of this moves fast. None of it moves fast. And quite honestly, last year we said, can we just give this a year to see what happens? And then last year was such a weird year that maybe we do need another year. Jim is very receptive for us asking questions. I can send him an email, or we can invite him here, or I can ask him both. We're kind of curious what's going on with the ADA, what's going on with the land trust with that. I can have a conversation with him.
Isn't that of all those options, isn't that may be the one that could be easiest. But that's a private landowner decision.
It might be easiest for them to agree with and come on board with, but I'm not sure that they're gonna have the bandwidth to actually get it done. You're having a conversation with Jim and Jim saying that's a good idea, we should do that is one thing. Trying to actually get something done in there is something else. And deep down, I think the answer is gonna be a combination of two. And I don't think the fill is gonna be one of them at all. So it's a combination of what's the land trust gonna do and how can we accommodate just a couple more cars to try to live up to what we sold to the select board.
And Chuck, I'm open to the idea of moving back the no parking area. There were the spaces across from the Huntington River Bridge that but I'll acknowledge that sometimes undoing an ordinance is harder than writing it to begin with, and it does take, I forget, 3 months or something.
And I want to be careful by playing with the ordinance that we don't go backwards. You know, I want to make sure that we're, I don't want to be too knee jerk from this, but to be honest with you, if things stay as they are, this summer is going to be miserable down there. And it's going to come back on us and it's not going to be pretty.
So let's talk about miserable. This became miserable during the pandemic. Now, it was 4 years ago. It was never miserable before. So it might, people might by nature start going elsewhere. It was never a problem until everyone was home.
Yeah, my definition of miserable is 20 people circling for 3 parking spaces with a car full of kids and inner tubes, and we've said, we've done this for 10 years, and how come now we can't park here? That's that, and again, that comes on us a little bit. I don't think we cause a problem, but maybe if we had our A game on, we would have predicted the problem. I get that.
The experience I've had with parking, recreational parking, is we never have enough parking places for people. So I think maybe it's a little bit on us to say, sorry, it's full. Maybe here's our map, here's some other locations that you might be able to cool off in the water. Maybe we can help with the communication part of it more.
You're not sending them to Dugway, are you, Diane?
Not at all.
You guys,
You're all-
Dugway to see other places.
you guys have the history here. I don't, but let me ask what may be a dumb question. But what is the remit? That's the fancy word. What's the, maybe better one's jurisdiction of the parking advisory committee for a situation where there's no public land to do with? So is it I'm just asking, is it our job to pursue a change in ordinance? I'm not articulating this very well, but I'm just wondering, is it our job to create a solution for something that it's really not where the public is invited anyway? I mean, they come to swim, but it's not as if it's a.
I guess one, maybe not for your legal mind, but for some people, the town helped pay for the acquisition of the Bombardier Meadow. So it's maybe quasi-public, not really public.
A great reminder of that.
That's a good.
All right, that's a good
Just
point,
us,
and
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Oh, does somebody need to be admitted?
Oh, dear.
That's what I was saying. That must be Lisa.
And the reason that we got involved at all is that it became a nuisance and the select board asked us explicitly to.
You unmute her.
And it's
Oh, I'm
not just a nuisance, but a safety issue.
this one
Oh,
has to unmute or?
There you go.
Lisa, you're on
Hey,
mute.
Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. Sorry we didn't see you earlier.
No, that's all right. I'm eating, so unless you want to watch me eat, don't look.
Okay.
okay.
Go ahead. I'll just sit here and chew.
Answer that
We're
question.
kind of rolling over the East Cochran Road parking questions right now. Everything else has been pretty much.
Another way for me to ask the
Boring.
question is, what is within our purview? in a situation where, I'm sorry, I'll have to think further about this to articulate what I'm asking. I mean, the public has, an easement to swim and fish in the Winooski River. But I'm aware of no statutory right to provide that the public has to have parking to do that. You know, meaning they can, just like Dugway, they can be in the river, they can enjoy the river. But I'm just wondering, is it up to this board or this committee to actually go about changing the legal ordinance situation to create something that's not there now?
As it pertains to public land?
As it pertains to public access. But you just brought up something really important. To what extent is this public, it's the Bombardier Meadow public land?
Mhm.
Listed as private.
Okay,
I guess I thought of it as it's a public road that's paid for with taxpayer money and that one use of a road is parking. And so that is part of the purpose of roads is parking. I don't, my perspective.
well, maybe an analogy, and this may be a poor one, is that every 4th of July, a lot of people park on Cochran Road, starting, half mile away from the village, and then walk. But parking there can be kind of tricky. And because it's not easy to pull off in certain areas, it's easier in other areas. But for example, would that be within the purview of the parking committee to make it easier for people to park on the 4th of July on Cochran Road?
In that example, neither the parking committee or the town, that's a state statute.
Yeah,
The parking on travel portion of the road. So in that example, we couldn't override that. And I think
right.
us and the state and everybody else has decided that, yep, it's gonna be cars on the travel portion of the road. As long as the rescue and fire trucks can get through, we're gonna look the other way.
So are we faced then with something very similar with the other end of Cochran Road? I mean, it seems to me it has to be, unless I'm missing something here, it has to be the land trust property.
Right. Although we're always dealing with the right of way.
Well, the town's gone to great effort to find parking in the village for people to go to private businesses. I don't see any reason the town can't put effort into, and if it was considering other factors, create parking to visit the
I
Bombardier
think part of
Meadow.
it is just my lack of history on the committee. And so I'm just trying to back up and find out, well, how did the whole East Cochran thing come up to begin with? So part of this is just me educating myself, and I apologize for taking time.
No.
That's good.
No.
Obviously, we're not slamming you with answers, but so you're making us think too. Is what this is. We're not.
I always go back to the reason why it came together. And that's one of the reasons why I always want the select board to see it on when we come in. Essentially, the Parking Advisory Committee was formed in December by the select board. The committee will analyze areas of Richmond that are attracting large numbers of parked cars, specifically in the summer months when people are visiting the many recreational locations in town. The committee will engage with stakeholders, residents, and town staff to develop solutions for crowded parking areas with a focus on safety of residents, pedestrians, and vehicle operators. These suggested solutions will be presented to the select board for consideration and approval and implementation.
That's helpful, thanks.
I go to this all the time when I'm going like, are we just doing, yeah. So
That's helpful, thank you. So, where do we head on this, on the East Cochran thing? I mean, I've written a note about, I think it was Diane who suggested that she'll approach Jim. Maybe invite him to come here. Or at least she'll invite him to have a conversation. I have that. Anything else that we wanna do tonight?
And that would,
Again, the other option is that we look to modify the existing ordinance. And the last option was that we pursue valid reasons why we could appeal the idea of not adding some fill in there. I mean, that, to me, that's the most benign solution, but the solution that has the most paperwork attached to it.
I would be willing to look at those things with you, Chuck, if you.
I'm just trying to figure out what direction do we want to go? Do we want to go all three directions?
They sound difficult, but I'd be.
I have just a question. So my understanding is that when Pete was talking about Phil, he was talking about creating a 10-foot or, enough where someone could be totally off, which was never the intent. I mean, is there an in-between kind of thing?
So what the,
Like a left, yeah.
approaching what Pete would say, because the meeting we were in, he said that, and it was amplified by Tyler's, you don't put fill on the side of the road for a car to pull over. He says, if we're gonna put fill for parking, you're gonna call it parking, it's going to be for the regulations that Pete would have to do, and that's 10 feet
Oh, I see.
in. 10 feet in so that somebody can pull their car in. And what they say, egress, is that the word he was using? Get around the car in that parking area. So that's why, because I was confused too. I said 10 feet in, and so it needs to be 10 feet if the town's gonna do it for parking. The other thing that we didn't talk about, John, do you remember? Cannot create parking for empty space, in other words. So like if, say there was a band shell there, you could make parking for a band shell, but there's nothing there. And this is, so it doesn't fit in. We can't put parking just for the sake of parking. It's not part of.
I thought he said it could be put in for recreational use, that he was able to find something that was okay.
All right, folks.
That was my impression.
Yeah, because I look at the Edmonds Bridge parking. That's
Mhm.
that
That
parking with
was-
no purpose other than
Yep,
what John said.
absolutely
recreation.
true.
Okay.
Now, when you
I
say
just
10 feet, do you mean that kind of a parking area, or are we talking cars parking parallel to East Cochran Road or perpendicular? Straight in perpendicular,
No,
Par-
parallel.
parallel.
Parallel parking 10 feet, so the car can fit in, both car doors can be open.
Yeah, that part, I heard the same thing, that
So maybe we need to talk about the zoning thing for no parking for parking's sake. Now, that's a great question. I'm not sure how and why that got put there.
yeah, so I thought he said we need a use, and the recreational is a use. That's what I thought.
Okay, yeah. I find it odd that we have this rule about fill, yet the town of Richmond stores all their fill down by Overrockers and the floodplain. And what they don't store there, they store at Mary Hool's in big piles right there. That's fill in the floodplain.
I
Is-
think it,
I'm sure they'll tell me it's temporary.
right.
And the recent flood gave us a lot of fill over here.
Yeah, exactly.
That is interesting.
Mhm.
So moving forward, how do we want to do this? Diane, it sounds like you'd like to have a conversation with Jim.
I think it's great. Not only about this, I would also like to know what the land trust is doing on the Beacon canoe access, because do you remember?
Yeah.
They were working in the field area.
Put over and
I'd be grateful. Today was a really big mess when I went by, so let's do maybe, yeah. Kind of like an update.
let me dig around into what exceptions or workarounds there are in filling the floodplain. I mean, they must be doing it every time they rebuild Montpelier. They must be bringing fill into a floodplain.
Can I show you a little more detail about what I dug up, which didn't.
Or if you want to pursue
satisfy-
it, I don't
No,
want to step on your
I'm
toes.
fine having a fresh mind looking at, but I could show you what I came up with that Tyler wasn't keen on.
Okay,
And Tyler is really open and available Where you could just like walk
Yeah, I
in.
worked on a few times.
Okay, there you go. So,
Okay,
Oh, and when we talked with Jim, or you talked with Jim, I wasn't sure if, do all 5 spaces have to be ADA, or would it be possible to have it a mix, I guess, is it crossed my mind.
I would love to see if Jim could come in to one
Yeah.
of our next meetings. I'm happy to,
Yeah.
we'll ask him about the work on the Bombardier Meadow, because I think
Yeah.
that might be good.
I almost, in my mind, when I picture what the land trust could do. I picture them not having a parking lot at all. I picture them having almost a circular driveway. That goes in here and comes out there, and you drive in, you get in the queue, you unload your stuff, you drive out. And something that was narrow enough that parking would be obviously not gonna work. You know what I'm saying? Like a circular driveway kind of a thing. But that would be a Jim question.
Mhm. All right,
If you want to look at the fill thing, I'll play around with some measurements and see if there's anything we can do just to
Uh,
sneak something into the ordinance. We're not talking much.
I'll show you what I
Okay.
talked to Tyler about. That makes sense. Where are we at, Matt?
we are at,
Did,
discussion regarding which parking areas are PAC responsibility.
did we finish East Cochran Road?
We
then?
did.
So Diane's gonna talk with Jim.
Yep.
I'm gonna share with you in detail what Tyler told me, my concerns. Okay,
and feel free to make another appointment with them.
Yeah.
The two of you, and
Hang on, that.
and then
Ready for you.
moving on to then number 4, discussion regarding which parking areas are parking advisory committee responsibility.
I put that on there because I think this came out of our conversation with the select board, where I don't think we were in total agreement with anybody as to which parking areas were we had some say in. A voluntary agreement was a question. We certainly had a question whether the Andrews Farm parking was gonna be them or us or whatever, and I guess part of the question here in my mind was if the select board moves forward with the wording changes that we suggested, certainly they would add overrockers to that, but do they also want us to add the Andrews Farm and what else?
Well, I have in the minutes from last meeting that I believe it was Lisa who suggested that in the future, it may be this year, that the Andrews Forest may be something where we'll be asked to step up. So I got the impression, and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, that it wasn't immediate that we would be asked, but we were kind of on notice that this may be something that we're asked to take on.
And I think there's a committee that's running that's doing a fine job. And just for respect and not to duplicate services, it would make sense for not to have us get too involved.
Right.
But my part of my question is, do our suggested changes to the parking area ordinance, will they be applied to that parking area, even though it's not necessarily under our umbrella? In Brown's Court, I assume that's going to apply to Brown's Court. And
so what other discussion?
Well, it's interesting because all this great work was done with Dugway, but now we're gonna be seeing how it all comes out. And so there's not a whole lot to do regarding Dugway right now, but wait and see how it works. And so where does that leave? And we've suggested the ordinance change for overrocker.
And again, I don't see that as being a big deal. I think our whole wording just clarified what we thought was already being said.
Yes.
I think we just needed to, we're in a world now that you have to spell things out a little bit better.
And how much more needs to be done with respect to checkers house at this time?
So let's just make this simple. What are the parking areas, the recreational parking areas that we think we have oversight on?
So it came again from pandemic driven for all the cars that were on there. So the reason, that's why we kind of picked onto that beacon canoe access, because that also was a time that people were parking along Cochran Road. So we took it upon ourselves at the beginning of that to say, you know, is there a field down there we can use? There was one right off. Here's Beacon. It was, you know, Krista has that field, land trust right next to Krista's land. That was one part, or the Richmond land trust, like the one that was just beyond the canoe access. So that's why we got involved with that, was to get the cars off the road. And it's fast. And so we haven't, kind of looking, I think we get brought in when there's questions, or we came into the Checkered House Bridge because we said, well, here's, you know, we're looking at both ends of the town, and there was a lot of parking down at the end of the road. Johnny Brook. Somebody had opened up their land for Chamber Hill, and it was there was overuse there. So there was it was too much for them to do anymore. So that's why the Checkered House Bridge came into play. The Checkered House Bridge, yes. Happened to look at the map and said that state property, could the state of Vermont let us park there. That's how that came about. So it's looking at these, that's where the Jonesville Railroad right of way came into play. It's like, how can we get them, how can we spread that out a little bit?
And I know I've been unclear, as I've heard said, no, we don't deal with Volunteers Green, but I don't know where that's coming from. And I guess the other thing is, I forget what word Chuck was using, oversight or purview. It's advisory, I think maybe is the word I would say.
That's a better word. I'm okay with that.
Thank you. But where did we hear that we weren't supposed to be involved with Volunteers Green?
Because it was a park that the town was making good use of, and they were handling their parking, and also there was the business that was associated with that parking area, and the town was very good at taking care of it. Nobody was saying, hey, you know, we need more help down here.
But did someone say, don't look at Volunteers Green?
Volunteers Green and the street parking along there at the time, in the very beginning, Kara said, town takes care of those. Nobody's asking us to take care of those. Let them take care. Oh, and also this parking.
What do we mean by take care? I mean,
There wasn't an issue.
there wasn't an issue.
There wasn't an issue.
I think this kind of bleeds into the one thing I think is important is that if we're going to tell people where they can park, you know, I think this kind of goes along to do we include it on our map? Like if somebody, and yesterday we were having a good conversation that there's a map on the town website. There are QR codes at all these parking places, but you know, maybe also we need to make sure that they're registered with Google Maps and Apple Maps. So even though there might not be an issue there, in some sense, you know, showing people all the rich places that they can, it's not like we're changing anything there, but we're talking, you know, I think that might be in our purview. I mean, in other words, if the only ones in our purview are the ones that have issues, then we're not really considering the whole parking problem. So I was just thinking from a communication.
Oh, Elisa has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just thinking, why did I raise it? I didn't mean to interrupt anybody, because where you're headed, I like listening. Somebody had brought up the Andrews Community Forest a couple minutes ago. I know I had raised that a meeting or two ago. What would you, and you don't have to answer this right now, but I'd like to know, what would you guys need to know about the uses or the expectations for Andrews Community Forest before you could recommend some sort of parking arrangement or volume or whatever? Because the ACF is reconstituting itself. It kind of devolved into a smoking heap, I guess, last year, and they're back on track. They're reconstituting the committee, and they are going to pick up where they left off. And this summer looks to be pretty busy year for the forest. So parking is definitely going to be something that will need to be specified over there. Because right now, I don't think they have anything much of, they have a path in, they have the gatehouse or the little toll booth thing or whatever. And that's about it. I think it's not been laid out for the users. So I guess they're going to want to know what you guys recommend. And before you can do that, you'd want to know what they are thinking. And whatever those items are, I'd like to find out.
Well, as a casual observer,
Hmm.
my impression was that there were folks in town that were really thinking to some extent it would be like a wildlife preserve
Mhm,
where recreation was harmful for wildlife and should be limited.
mhm,
There were many other people that didn't feel that way,
mhm.
but that if there was a decision that it was going to be a wildlife preserve, then you wouldn't maybe want any parking at all, which
Right.
I think is the sentiment of the town in general. But
Mhm.
I guess that debate maybe would need some conclusion. Chuck?
I think one of the things that I really like about the Andrews Preserve and the parking is
Mhm.
that one of the conversations we have about Dugway all the time is, how many people using the river is too much?
Mhm.
Nobody's ever done
Mhm.
a study to see when the use is detrimental. We
Right.
see canoe access is that the banks are all worn down and the erosion has gone way up because everybody's just going down wherever. What I really
Mhm.
like about the Andrews is that we can look at that and maybe come up with an idea of what the carrying capacity is and adjust the parking accordingly. So I guess my first question is, what are the accepted uses of it?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know. I mean, with the trails, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Chuck. Yeah, with the trails that are carved there and the mandate in the plan to extend trails, what have you, there's going to be users. So how many? And I think that's a good point. How many is the committee, Andrew's committee, Forest Committee, considering to be full? There's a lot of space in there, but it's also very fragile space. And I think that's one of the central issues that they're struggling with and even caused some problems in the last go round, that committee, to define what that means. What is the carrying capacity? How many people is too many, to be in that ecosystem at one time? I don't know, but that's a good point. And you shouldn't have to answer that. They should. And they've got the studies produced at great cost and great insight. And that needs to be squeezed out of those so that then you guys can have a quantity that's expected. And then, you know what to do with that.
So I have a
Mhm.
practical question about process.
Mhm.
Are we waiting for the Andrews Forest people to come to us and say, we need your assistance? Or we would like you to get involved? Or are we basically saying to them, we're ready to get involved? I feel like there's, this is not criticism, Lisa, but I feel like there's a mixed message here as to who's on first.
Right.
With respect to Andrews Forest parking.
Well, good point. Yeah, thanks, Buck. Matt. I don't know the answer to that exactly, but I think if the ACF knows that you guys are available and willing to comment, or at least provide insight or thoughts or whichever, that would be a load off their minds. I think they're looking at the entirety of the work to get ACF up to speed as a community resource. They're seeing that being a really large task, and it is, and that's kind of what did in the committee before. It's a large, multi-year commitment I think we've made to our citizens and to ourselves with buying that land. And we commissioned a really big study to look at the habitat, the wildlife diversity, the steep slopes, the potentials for erosion, and so forth, surrounding properties, which may or may not be connected to their trails through the ACF. There's a lot of unknowns that ACF is going to have to work with, and users are really fundamental to that. They're part and parcel of that conversation, and users are probably going to drive there because of where it is. So I think they're probably not going to have good volume information for you guys anytime soon. But you're right. There's also going to be some people parking there now, April, May, going up to use the trails because it's not closed. So maybe like a quick, I'll be talking to them if you like. I'll bring up that question and pass it on to them too, so that both ends of the string here have have kind of a common thread. But I think they're going to need to enable some use of that park with some limitations really soon. Right now is a little bit early because it's so muddy, but say April and on, they're going to need advice from you guys.
Well, do they know that? Yeah, I guess as well.
A good question. I will tell them that. I mean, I'll tell them, then they'll know. But right now, I'm not sure they are focused on that yet.
Would one of us want to contact you could tell us the best contact person for ACF.
Mhm.
One of us, or it could be you, it doesn't matter, but I think that we need to
Mhm.
ask the simple question. Are you ready for our assistance?
You know, that's a good point. Daniel Schmidt is he's the chair of the ACF, and also Brad Elliott is someone who is very capable, in my estimate anyway, who was just reappointed to the ACF committee. And there's several other members who have been there maybe even longer than Brad. But I would say go through the chair because it's just easier line of communication. So Daniel Schmidt would be the one to write to. If I think his email address is on the town website under the Andrews Community Forest. I can dig it up for you if you need.
I think we all, I'll speak for myself anyways, my biggest concern is stepping on toes where I'm not embedded in life.
Sure. Yeah.
We are not the wizards of parking. We are just people.
Articulate
You're the only ones we've got.
that is, do they want us at this point?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I mean, I think
Uh-huh.
I have a lot of thoughts on it, but
Mhm.
I don't know that I want to spout about them until I sit and listen to them and learn what they know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mhm.
Tell them.
Yeah,
Lisa,
both sides have a part in this. How about if you'd like, I'll be attending their next meeting and I'll suggest, well, not even suggest to them, I'll just let them know that the Parking Advisory Committee could render an opinion if they want one.
Let them know that we are
Ready to
not
give
kicking the
advice.
doors in. We are
Right.
humbly asking if if we can work together.
Yeah, exactly. I think
Um,
they'd be thrilled, honestly, because that's a large, if you took like the Recreation Committee, the Parking Advisory Committee, Andrews Community Forest Committee, several other committees that the town has, and rolled them all into one. That's kind of what ACF is like. It's a difficult thing to manage. There's so many, but it's so much potential with that forest, and it can go in so many directions. And the management plan that they hired and hired out and had done, I think it's like 320 pages or so. I've read some of it. It's a good read, but it's long, and it still doesn't address the fundamental questions like, what is the carrying capacity? How many cars would you expect to drive in there? What do we do if it's really muddy? They've got to work all that out. So they may
Yes.
not be ready for answers anytime soon. They may not have any information anytime soon, but they will at some point.
so I'm thinking about our agenda item. Sorry, I'm just doing my thing. I can't help myself. I'm thinking about our agenda item currently, which is identifying areas for the PAC. And we've identified the possibility of Andrews Community Forest. Have we said that for now, nothing further to be done with Brown's Court or Checkered House unless we are contacted to do so? Is that what we're saying?
Well, Checker House, we have a maintenance basically agreement with V-Trans on
Right,
that.
right.
So we'll be opening that up May
improve
15th.
signage, yeah.
Brown's Court, of course, is looking more and more like a pickleball, bocce ball future is there, and we've worked with that committee a little bit, so I think we'll still be offering our services to them if they want that.
Well, I'm sorry, I was trying to say something else. Is there something that we need to get proactive about between now and the next meeting regarding Brown's Court or Checkered House?
I would say no,
Okay,
my individual thoughts.
So
okay.
the point about whether we put them on maps, should we consult with them first?
Wait, who?
Like if we're gonna, well, Andrews Forest is
they're-
already on the map,
They're on.
but
Is this your additional agenda item?
well, it's kind of on this.
It's on this
In other
one.
words,
Sorry.
it's on this agenda item in the sense that
Okay,
there's nothing to be done, but in a couple of cases, that's a bad example because Andrews Farm is. should we ask them before we put something on the map that we don't, let me think of, what was one that was,
So I,
Uh,
we,
So we
we-
talked a little bit, I think an example for you might be the one on the edge of town, that's the land
Yeah.
trust.
or
so I have a point.
Willis Hill.
That's what I was the one,
But
thank you.
have a point for Jim. Google and Apple Maps, are they gonna, I want to know if they're intending to put their rec areas on.
Yeah.
I think it's a good question to ask them. I can ask him, or if he comes and visits us, we can ask him together.
Because it occurred to me that people in town may know to check the website and be able to find Richmond, Vermont, but people who are driving through, which is a lot of people who come here, we want them to guide them to the places where they can park.
Okay,
Do you
so
know where
Don,
that
would you
belongs?
articulate, I'm sorry.
That belongs on one of Diane's temporary signs. Everywhere.
Hmm.
They are-
Welcome
it
to
does.
Richmond. Scan this for parking options.
That's what it does. It does do that.
Take,
And I,
takes
and I
it to
keep it
the,
current, yeah.
takes it to, do you want to tell them about the Chamber Hill parking?
Oh, yeah, for example, on Google Maps, I was thinking about this yesterday. We are sort of now sliding into the other topic.
Well,
Okay?
and
I can hold on.
yeah, I apologize, so that I can keep up with him. Could you just tell me what areas are you proposing go onto the maps? You mentioned a couple of things, but,
I don't know right now, because I don't know all the ones we don't know.
okay.
But for example, Willis Hill. It's kind of an unofficial parking place. There are a couple of others. And the question is, should they be on our map? And if they are going to be on our map, kind of leading into this, the initial topic is, should we ask whoever runs that before we put it on the map?
And I'm sorry, I apologize. When you say our map, what map are you
So
referring
what
to?
Diane just said, and Chuck just wished for, but we have is that on the on the temporary signs, there's a QR code. And it points you to a map that I maintain on the richmondvermont.gov parking thing.
Okay.
And so if you happen to, if you scan that QR code, that's something that we keep current. So like I took off the Bombardier parking, whenever anything happens, but it isn't complete. There are a couple, it's only a small number of other parking places. But then Diane brought up something else, but I think that's in the next one.
And that map is called what again, Don? I'm sorry.
Called what?
What would you
Or-
title
or-
on that?
It's the
do you-
Richmond parking, Richmond recreational parking map.
Thank you, okay.
So other than the land trust, what properties are there that are not town parking areas that you would put on there?
I can only think of the Willis Hill, but I think there are a couple.
Willis Hill Land Trust?
I think so.
Is the
Oh,
Robbins Mountain on there?
That's what I'm thinking too. That,
Robbins Mountain is not on there, and or maybe it is, but there's also down Johnny Brook. There's a RLT field that is usable and has,
but that's private property, right?
RLT.
it's RLT and.
Oh, it
the
is?
intent, yeah,
Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
the intent, but there's,
I can't
and there's street parking there. It's not a busy
Yeah.
And
road.
this is where, which RLP property?
That's down Johnny Brook. I
Okay.
guess my question is, if you want, I'll try to figure out which things are not on there.
Yeah, I
And then-
was,
We should ask, just to give a more complete picture. And then tell me when I can go into the next topic.
I still have a question on number 4. so
Okay,
I
let's
don't-
stay on that. Yeah.
All right, let's finish off number 4.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my question is, or my understanding, correct me on this, is that in the past, it could have been a year or more ago, the members of this committee had decided that Volunteers Green was not an area we were actively going to be involved in. The other, I'm checking if that's the case, not that Josh or the select board said, stay away from Volunteers Green. That's just been a decision we've made. Is that?
Yeah, because it's been managed by the town for so long, because if something's to happen there, they have to contact Josh for a letter of usage. And so it's pretty well managed, but
Oh, so we're picking, and I'm not saying we should change that, but we've been picking and choosing, and we can continue to pick and
Been
choose as far
picking-
as we know.
We've been picking and choosing, again, due to our charge on areas where overcrowding occurs. And I venture to say that Volunteers Green does have overcrowding, but and that's why that's where some things came up, like another reason to do the Checkered House Bridge. We're trying to find other ways
Oh,
to
okay,
spread the love along the river.
all right, so we're not currently working on that, but someday
think we
this
should-
committee could conceivably, or other areas that we're not, oh,
We came in once early on, John, do you remember? There was a bike company that was using.
Yeah, I
that.
do
You
remember, yes.
that? And then, we just stepped in for a quick moment. They worked with somebody for, I think, the Round Church parking and all's good.
Now they're using Brown's Court.
Oh, yeah, they moved up to Browns Court.
I think the phrase I remember that kept us out of Volunteers Green was organized recreational parking. In other words, organized recreation, T-ball, soccer, all those things. We didn't do that. We did recreational parking, meaning cycling, hitting the river, or whatever. And that's kind of been the litmus test for me.
Yeah, so we don't come in for when Cochran's is having a bike race.
Oh,
It's good to know our boundaries, so.
We're about
this com-
disorganized.
this
We are disorganized.
It's disorganized.
all right, number 4, was, John, were you ready to move on, and were we ready to move on?
Yeah.
Or was once again,
Yeah.
the discussion.
Discussion regarding which parking areas are PAC responsibility.
Is there a charge from that? Were you gonna look at all the things that are possible?
I was gonna try to collect a list. I don't think we're missing many on our map. The question would be, so this brings up what you had talked about yesterday, is that what we call the Checkered House Bridge parking, somebody had labeled it the Chamber, what is it?
Chamber Hill
Chamber Hill
Trails.
Trails.
Parking.
And not that that's a bad thing, but, because that is where it is, but should we be consistent? So what it works like this for Google and a little bit different for Apple is you can indicate a name, you can suggest a change, and then they manually curate it. And so it seems to me that the people who are coming into town are very unlikely to, be able to find their way to the Richmond town map. And the only time that they would ever find it is if they scan the QR code. So my thought would be a service we could do would be to update the Google and Apple maps to indicate, what we have there. Unfortunately, you can't put additional information. You can't say this is how many parking places, but at least you could put it on a map. And if somebody said, where's parking or recreational parking in Richmond, Vermont, they would all come up.
Are we still number 4?
No, we moved on.
We
I
moved on.
apologize. Okay, I thought we were still number 4.
And this is one of the, so this is,
We're now adding,
let's call it,
I have to timestamp this.
but if you want, yeah, exactly, that'd be lovely.
Okay,
Let's call it, maps, John Cohn, JC.
Mhm.
Map discussion. Okay, and we'll call that, what date, what time are you putting on that?
7:08 is when they started.
Sorry, John.
Mhm.
You want to tell them what you did after you saw the,
Well, I did put in a suggestion that they change the Chamber Hill map name to Checkered Hill Bridge because that's what the state calls it,
Checkered House?
Checkered House Bridge. But at the same time, there's no harm in actually having multiple name points. It's just,
So what was difficult is that when if John asked, can we please call it Checkered
Checkered,
House Bridge parking, there's no spot to put underneath their uses like Chamber Hill Trail System or 10 spots available or seasonal use. There's no place to put additional information. Is there a way to?
I don't think so. I can research it a little bit more, but it occurred to me that rather than change theirs, I can just put an additional because that way, when
it's a great
somebody
idea.
searches Richmond recreational parking, it'll come up and their navigation on the car will come up and all that stuff.
So in other words, put a duplicate name on that spot.
Do you
That's
want,
the easiest.
is that worth me doing? I think it would be a good service. And I think I would ask the land trust if they minded.
No, that, well,
the
my
beat-
trust doesn't know.
No, but Beacon parking is on it and none of their others are, from what I can tell. I mean, is that doing something we weren't even asked to do? But I think in terms of stewardship, you know, we want people to be able to spread out and use all of these places. They should know about them, especially people who don't live in town.
You know, you bring up a really good point. And you all had mentioned the Robbins Mountain parking. And there is that unused, parking area that
Oh,
has a
behind the,
mattress in it right now. or something.
behind the gun club.
Behind the gun club, but there's also parking that is allowed inside. You have to drive through the gun club. That's not on the map either, just people know to do
Is
it.
that membership only?
No, it is membership only to be in the gun club, but if you wanted to hike Robbins Mountain,
That's a DNR,
yes, oh, that's what it's called.
Yep.
Department. of
Natural Resources, that's there.
That's
Yeah,
there,
you're right.
so that's not pinpointed either. So,
Great. Yeah, pretty limited parking up there though, and
Four
muddy
spots.
as the dickens, but
we use it frequently.
well, I enjoy that up there.
Yeah. So there's all of that can be discussed in a map. I don't know if we want to pursue all of those.
So I mean,
Let me answer two different questions. I'll go out and I'll figure out
Okay,
what is not on our map that might want to be and depending on where it is, do we need to ask before we put it on the town map? And then I think I should ask. I'm sure the town will say, okay, I would like to ask the land trust if it's okay if we put them there or ask them to put them there. Does that make sense?
so maybe before the next meeting, let's do a list of all the parking areas that we identify that we think would qualify. And then we can divvy up getting permission from wherever and whoever to get those put on the map. We'll all kind of brainstorm now, except I know there's some little quirky spots we're not remembering.
Yeah, they're not a lot, but it's worth, I think. doing.
And again, you guys have more experience, there's more history here. The map we're referring to is exactly what map? Again, is it the one that you referred to earlier
That's the
as the
Richmond.
Richmond recreational parking map? Okay.
So can I add into that mix too, Chuck, we should all just go away and think about this is, do we want to put those pull-offs that we know on Dugway Road on the riverside that we know people do park in?
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, me too.
You know, I think a parking area is a parking area as opposed to a spot that you can just sneak your car into. I think an overview, I think if we were to have something on Dugway Road that said, roadside parking is often available. Just maintain the state statute of, whatever.
So we have the signs.
And I wonder, because we're talking about this, and I can think of a few people who would love to go on that map and say, please, no parking here. I know that they drive Chuck far crazy on that bike trail because they want to pull over and park down off that corner. He can't get his tractors out.
All right. We're all gonna go away and think about that. Come back to the next meeting.
Are we moving on to number 5, review calendar?
Well, Diane had
Yeah.
there was something that she wanted to bring up, and I have it in my notes as follow up on park
Park ordinance.
ordinance.
When you all presented to the select board, had that beautiful chart about park ordinance and the wording, which I thought was awesome. And we did it, and then we all went away going, are we supposed to do anything more on that? And so I sent Josh a note. And says, Diane, thanks for the follow-up. The PAC does not need to do any more work on the park ordinance. I'll get that amendment on the March 18th select board agenda to see if they want to set a hearing date to then vote on the amendment to the ordinance. We weren't asked to attend or do any other work than what we did on that presentation. So
Nice.
So, Lisa, you're on board with that? That's makes sense?
Yeah, I didn't quite understand what the term that you used,
there is a park ordinance.
uh-huh,
And I didn't read it to the first time that we were working with what that all meant. And Over Rocker Park is not on there, so we all did a
Hmm.
bunch of work with words around adding Over Rocker Park into the
Oh.
ordinance on that presentation that was done. And Josh has all that information. And then
Hmm.
also changing the wording. I don't know exactly, it was explicit saying no sleeping overnight or something like
Yeah,
that, no.
Or renting of
car
shelters,
is
campers,
free,
whatever, or
Yeah.
other.
yeah, that's right, yeah, we'll see it again this summer. Mhm.
Specific language suggestions, and they were okay with it, which
Yes,
is good.
exactly.
Yeah.
And Josh was okay with it, and
Mhm.
he,
It's a nice.
Yeah, that didn't cause any kind of stir at the select board meeting. It was just like, oh, good, we need something like this, so there it is, okay.
fantastic.
All right, so that's an update. We don't have to take any action on that.
Correct.
And John's map question we've already covered. Is that right?
Yeah.
Are we moving on to review calendar for 2024 and schedule meeting?
No, somebody had brought up, John Cohn had made reference to revisiting lease on railroad right away.
So so mostly, I think Lisa and Matt, maybe you don't even know, Chuck, but there's a long story of there's about 8 car available, worth of parking right opposite Be There Towing. They use it now. And I think that's legal, but, we had tried to figure out who owned it, and it was very complicated. It turned out that the Vermont Rail sold it to Canadian National, and Canadian National sold it to whatever GRC, another rail. And we finally tracked down the person, thinking that they would say, hey, sure, that land is, free to use. There were some safety considerations you had to do to make sure that nobody walked over there. But we had suggested $1 a year, and the guy came back and said, it's $1,000. We can talk about $1,000 a year. And at the time, we just went, who wants that? But question would be, first of all, should we try again? And is $1,000 a year, for 8 parking places that are near, Bombardier Field, is that worth revisiting?
Hmm.
Or is that
Give me a geographic here. We talking across the post office? We
Yeah.
right
talking,
across from
Yeah.
so where the Be There
Yes,
towing guys park all their cars
yes.
right? And they're doing that.
for $2 a year,
What's it?
$2 a year.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we could come up with an arrangement that during, peak parking time that they got out of there, they got quite a bit of space. The question is, would the town want to take that on? There is precedent for a town buying right away down near the cheese factory in town. And that was like a major ordeal. But, given that parking, kind of to your point, that if we're not providing adequate parking, does that count? Or the other side of the bridge isn't particularly convenient.
It helps.
But I'll tell you what, how's about I just freshen that request and just
So
find
there's-
it. Yeah.
So to fill in a little bit, the lawyers, just a reminder, the lawyers,
God, yeah.
right, had created the document, and Josh then sent, it was Josh's hand.
To the
He
town
sent-
lawyer, yeah.
Yeah, and then they sent it to so you could, I would recommend you talk to Josh first to see, does
Yeah.
this make sense? There's a couple things I'm cautious about. One is, I don't want to put somebody out of business by taking over their parking. So I think we all need to be sensitive about the usage that's being done there right now. And the second one, especially talking to the V-Trans guy, Joe Kelly, when you talk about crossing a train crossing for pedestrian usage, you enter a whole different legality. And I'm not sure what they do in town, but I know whether we need to have another arm that comes down, whether we have to have, you know, it just brings in a whole different legality that he said, oh, it's a nightmare. I think his words were, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that that's what is a
Yeah,
possibility.
And I think
It's
to your
difficult.
point, a lot of the back and forth, we had gone, quote, redlining the, the usage agreement before they had mentioned the money. And a lot of it was about liability, in terms of them indemnifying themselves against anything. And the town having to take it on, would the town insurance cover that?
But if they were parking there to go for a bike ride down Route 2,
Which they legally, I mean.
Anyone
it's-
can park there.
It's private.
I'm just trying to say,
property. I'm
what is
just-
saying that these people are crossing the tracks?
So if, the point is if the town
Sanctions.
sanctions parking here for recreational use, that's a different thing than saying, hey, did you know there's parking over there? You could just park and go for a bike ride.
Mhm.
Like, that means something completely different. It's when we step in and say, hey,
So we would, if we acknowledged that as being parking, we acknowledge the risk. Just like the Huntington Gorge or whatever, that's why we could never own
Well,
that.
and I think Diane brings up a really good point of, like if we put a sign one in one, both ends of the 8 spaces or whatever. That this somehow is recreational parking, does that impinge upon non-recreational parking? I just.
Well, it's,
We have to be careful there, because the parking that takes place there is done for a lot of reasons. There's a few park and ride people that. When they go to various events in Waterbury, that sort of thing.
and they're essentially parking in private property.
Yeah,
without-
it's
I
all,
was gonna say,
it's all very unofficial.
it's very unofficial, especially on Sundays when there's no post office open. A lot of people use that for
Yeah.
parking. And it is very unofficial. And
And it is private property. So we could do this, but it would, I think it could impact either towing's business, though they have quite a bit of land. And I think there's the safety issue, but it is,
it would-
I like Diane's idea of talking to Josh first.
let's talk to Josh first.
I think it would be hard to, it would
I'll
be
talk
hard
to
to
Josh.
town
I'll-
take that over,
I'll talk to Josh and
Mhm.
particularly if we
he's got to have,
mention river access and all that kind of stuff. Without also taking on the burden of safety of saying, here's a crossing area and adding tow bars to the thing that block the parking area or whatever happens, and that's.
And people can park there now if it's not filled with Be There Towing or
Right.
someone else that's
Yeah.
parked there.
absolutely.
I'm not opposed to inquiring more.
we
but
could, actually, that's an interesting point. If we could engage, let's talk to Josh, but if Be There Towing could clear it out for those weekend days. I don't know how civically minded they would be,
So
but
Kara actually worked with them that first summer.
what'd they say?
They moved their big trucks on hot weekends.
How about that?
And again, it's one of these things that, I think they moved them down to her land, honestly, so I don't know how that's.
They're
gonna
all on
work.
Dugway Road anyway, so why, they're not parked there, they're all yanking cars off Dugway Road.
Yes, well, they're gone, yeah.
There's plenty of access.
It's yeah,
I think it's worth pursuing, I think
go see what, Josh.
it's an olive branch if nothing else in trying to solve the issue down there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay,
Um,
now.
okay.
Now we've covered the added agenda items.
Yeah.
There is one thing we haven't talked about, which we can put on the next agenda. And that is Gillette Pond.
Oh,
I put that on the back burner intentionally, because I figured that we had time on that one. I'm putting it on for next.
Next time?
agenda. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. All right, that's next time agenda. Thanks, Chuck. And you all have I sent it all to
Ruling.
yeah.
That was good.
And moving on to review calendar for 2024 and schedule meetings.
Yeah,
Our
so,
next scheduled on the calendar meeting is the 25th,
and yes, and then after that is the 8th.
correct?
Yeah. Do we feel that we talk about once a month? Or other times?
My feeling is it's gonna be a bit fluid, meaning if Andrews Forest wants us to get involved, we may be meeting twice a month. So, and again, you guys have the history here. Do we need to decide for the year if it's gonna be every 2 weeks or once a month, whatever? Can we look at what the workload is and go from there?
I think it is fluid. You were right.
I personally would like to meet twice a month, just to keep productive. And I do think we're entering some of the more productive, busier times of the year right now. I think it's, January, February, yeah, we can kind of snooze through those. But I'm not married to that idea, I just, how I feel.
Mhm. I think the 25th we can meet. I think the 8th is.
That's the eclipse.
The eclipse, and I kind of, I know it's not eclipsing at that time, but we do have company in for that.
Well, the one after that would be the 22nd. So I would be up for meeting on the 25th of March.
Mhm.
Just be clear, it would have to be without me. I'm doing what promises to be a 10-hour mediation in Stowe,
Okay.
and no offense,
Yikes.
I'm not gonna wanna drive back into Richmond for till 6 and
Oh, offense taken.
then come do this for 2 hours.
No, that's fine. I'm trying to
Yeah, that just,
find the compromise between twice a month.
Oh, I
If we-
agree.
If
I
we take the
agree.
eclipse off,
but March 25th is just not gonna work.
because we're all gonna
We
be,
could reschedule the eclipse. I'll talk to Josh about
Or you could meet without, I mean, I don't have to be here.
is there? I mean, that's probably true. I mean, how do you guys feel about meeting without Matt on the 25th or bumping it to the 26th or?
it.
I have a conflict. No, I'm not free on the 26th.
So that's a Tuesday, right?
I'm free on the 20th. That's a Tuesday, right? I'm
Yeah,
free
that'd
on
be a
the
Tuesday.
Wednesday, the 27th would work probably better for me.
27th. I have a conflict.
Yeah, how's the 28th? I'm not sure.
Well, I'd say we try, my thought would be if we try to hit the 26th and then hit the 22nd of April. That's
So be the 20, are we talking March 26th?
March 26th, 2 weeks from now.
That does not work.
Okay.
The 20, are we talking about meeting without Matt on the 25th? Or moving?
25th without Matt, or I was looking at the 26th for whole turnout,
Yeah, I can't do it.
but we lose you on the 26th, but we have you on the
John
27th.
on the 27th. And then maybe the 28th, I don't know. Maybe it's
Thursday.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe. I don't have my full calendar here.
Do we agree on April 22?
Yes.
So that would put us 6 weeks out.
And we want to meet one other time in there.
Now, we can either, in my way of thinking, if we wanted to try to get another meeting in, we can either work around the 25th, or we can work around the eclipse. We could do the 9th or something.
Is the week in between this room is taken? The week of the 18th is a room taken, and so we're leaving that week out.
The 18th,
March 18th.
next week.
Oh, April, that's too soon. April 1st.
Probably the select board if we do every other.
Me too, and there's the other meeting room. I'm just throwing that out. I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
it's all good.
April first would be great for me if there's another room.
April first, that's.
April first, the only thing on the count, well, we got select board, water and sewer. Are both meeting. 6 to 7 for water and sewer, we could try doing a 7 to 8,
Not available on the first,
I'm sorry,
not available on the first.
I'm sorry. So maybe our best bet would be to try to work. Something around the eclipse. How about the 10th? Any thoughts on April 10th?
Pretty as far as I know.
Free.
I'm free.
Okay, so we did,
Oh, I'm not free.
Um,
I'm free until 7:30.
Oh, is the 10th a Wednesday?
yes.
Wednesdays aren't good for me.
Mhm.
Free until 7:30. I think we need to form Richmond Parking Advisory Council Calendar Committee.
it's funny, I just filled out the reapplied for my position.
Mhm.
And the last question on the thing is, please review the calendar and make sure you're available for all the scheduled meetings. So it's like, okay. Those are carved in jello. So we got 3 of them, we're here now.
What we could do.
You could do March 25th as long as someone else wants to take minutes.
Yeah, of course.
Well, obviously, we're trying to avoid that.
Yes.
I'll do the
I mean,
minutes.
who else is gonna yell at you guys to
I'll do the minutes,
stay on the agenda?
but I won't do, I won't do as nice as you.
We decided there was a conflict for Thursdays, is that right?
We're good on the 25th.
Oh, okay.
It's just way too much. Matt's just gonna come here and have a cup of tea while we talk.
All right, so we're gonna go 3:25 followed up by 4:22.
Okay.
Is that what I understood?
And I'll do the minutes.
Perfect.
And if for some reason my thing is still ends earlier, I'll do my
Or
best.
if you need Sherry now.
Yeah.
All right, well, at least we can get to there and then everybody look at their.
I think that's fine. I think that we're that far out. I
Alright.
think we got
Yeah.
some deadlines to work for. I think that's okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, next item.
Approve
Minutes.
February 12th, 2024 minutes.
Moved.
I have a copy if anyone needs
I got
them.
a question on it.
Okay.
Oh, good. Oh, then I take that.
Some people do read them.
Okay.
I just, down, I can just. do
No,
my-
I got mine right here.
Okay, down, at 6:08.
Yeah.
Down, 4, 5, 6, 7th paragraph. Chuck moved to recommend to select board creation of 6 additional parking spaces on north side. What are we talking about there? What north side? Are we talking about Lardier or Gillette Pond?
That's a great question. It was Gillette Pond.
Okay,
On the north side.
of Gillette Pond.
That's,
Oh, is it more of a west side than a?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a west side.
Well, I remember the word north, but
Okay, is it west side? So west side? Okay.
It might not be a true north-south
It
road.
might be in northwest.
In parentheses, across the street.
I'm trying to think of where Mansfield is from
okay, so
Kenny's.
Diana suggested, and I just added west side of Gillette Pond.
Perfect, thank you so much.
John, is that right?
And so when you,
I'm quickly looking at the
you know
map
how I
here.
need to do that, when you send them in, you send them in rather approved,
pretty
amended.
much northwest,
What was
from
that?
what I see.
Yeah, I think it's northwest.
I think your wording can stand that.
Northwest? That was the only thing. Other than that, I'm all good.
Okay. So I'm gonna write, okay. Minutes approved except for Diane's challenge.
Good catch.
Geographical challenge. Did we make a motion to approve and all that?
I prematurely made a motion.
Yes, and then you can approve them, and then he just has to, when he sends them, it's amended and approved, so Duncan puts these over the.
Do we have the needed motions then?
I need a second.
Second it,
Who moved?
I did.
John moved.
All those in favor? Aye.
And
I,
just to be clear, we were joking, but are we saying west side? Is that what we're saying now, or northwest?
I believe northwest would be
Northwest.
geographically correct.
Okay,
Geez, you guys have to-
okay.
Is that then, we already went through additions.
Mhm.
And we did, have we, where are we time wise?
7:36.
We potentially, we're gonna talk about temporary signs if we could fit it in today, or we can wait till next time. Do you wanna try to bat that around today?
I'm happy to put that on for
Do we
next
need to
agenda. If
reopen the meeting?
everybody, if everyone can just think of, do you know, understand what we were talking about, everyone? Like a neighborhood sign that says,
Yes,
I think it's,
Mine would be for Checker House, I wanna have a temporary sign that says seasonal recreational parking. May 15th to November 15th, just so people aren't shocked when it closes. And the state has been a little difficult to get to the point of actually putting a real sign up.
so next agenda, or agenda item for next meeting.
Our homework is that we should be thinking about temporary signs.
Mhm.
We should be identifying parking areas, quasi parking areas, unofficial parking areas for John to map. We got some to-dos. What else, boss?
Ready to adjourn then, I guess. We-
Okay,
we have a motion to adjourn?
yes,
Is it seconded?
I'll second.
All those in favor of adjourning? Aye.
All right. Thank you, Lisa.
Motion,
Thank you, guys. Good work.